She thought the dog was just being affectionate. He wasn't being affectionate. He was trying to stop something that was already starting. It started on a Saturday, which is the day nobody pays close enough attention. Ruth Halverson was 82 years old, sharp as ever. Her daughter Vera's words, the kind of grandmother who remembered birthdays without prompting and kept her medical appointments without being reminded. She had come to stay for a long weekend while Vera and her husband Damien drove to a conference in Denver. Silas, 7 months old, was in the crib. The house was quiet. Ruth had done this before. Beau was a 4-year-old lab mix, chocolate brown, a rescue they had gotten when Silas was still theoretical. He was not particularly dramatic. He ate. He slept. On the kitchen floor, he barked exactly once a day at the mail carrier, and then moved on with his life. He had tolerated Silas with the patient resignation of an animal that had not been consulted on the household decision. Saturday morning, Beau stopped moving the way he normally moved. He followed Ruth, not from interest, not from hunger, with his full body, step for step, not asking for anything. He sat when she sat, stood when she stood. When she went to check on Silas, he went. When she came back to the kitchen for her tea, he came. Ruth thought it was sweet. She told him so. She gave him a small piece of her wheat toast. By noon, Beau was pressed against her leg while she sat in the rocking chair by the crib, not asking for attention, not moving, just present, with a weight and a stillness that was different from his ordinary ease. Ruth found herself reaching down to rest her hand on his back. She was reading when the first headache began. Not severe, the dull kind she sometimes got when she drove too long in direct sunlight. She had driven 3 hours in direct sunlight the morning before. She attributed it to that. She took 2 aspirin with her afternoon tea and called Vera to report that Silas was fine. Everything was fine, and she planned to order something for dinner from the Thai place Vera had bookmarked. Beau did not leave her side. At 4 in the afternoon, the headache was worse. The quality of it had changed in a way Ruth did not have a good word for. Heavier, somehow, like pressure from the outside rather than the inside. She stood up from the rocking chair and steadied herself for a moment, with one hand on the armrest. Beau rose with her, pressed against her left leg. She was confused, she would say later, but not alarmed by the confusion. She had been confused before. When she was tired, when her blood pressure ran low, she walked to the kitchen for water. Beau herded her. She felt it before she understood it, his body nudging her right hip, gentle, persistent, redirecting her toward the front door instead of the kitchen. She told him no. He pushed again. Ruth laughed. She told the story later with a laugh. This ridiculous dog pushing her toward the front door on a Saturday afternoon, for no reason she could name. But she went to the front door. She opened it. She stepped onto the porch. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you're in the right place. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. The neighbor across the street, a retired fire captain named Gerald Marsh, was in his driveway and saw Ruth step out with the dog, and something in the way she was standing made him cross the street. He said later that it was the stillness. She was standing on the porch, and she was not moving, and she was not looking at anything. He reached her in 40 seconds. He called 911 from her porch while Beau stood between Ruth and the front steps, body blocking the drop, not moving. The carbon monoxide detector inside the house had a battery that had died 4 weeks prior. Vera and Damien had noticed the low battery chirp and added batteries to a grocery list that had not been filled yet. The detector had been silent for 3 weeks. The furnace in the crawl space had a cracked heat exchanger. The CO level inside the house when the fire department tested it was 240 parts per million. The OSHA limit for 8-hour exposure is 50. Evacuation is recommended above 70. Ruth had been inside for 6 hours. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. The emergency physician, Dr. Lionel Essen, spoke with Vera by phone while she was still 2 hours from Denver. He described Ruth's CO level and the timeline and said, very directly, she needed to get outside, and she got outside, and that is the reason I'm talking to you on the phone, instead of a different kind of conversation. Silas was tested and cleared. The crib was on the second floor, where CO levels were lower, and his exposure time shorter. Ruth spent one night in the hospital. She came home Sunday morning and ate breakfast on the porch with Beau pressed against her left leg. Dogs detect carbon monoxide at concentrations far below human sensory threshold, Dr. Essien had explained. The specific physiological changes CO begins producing in a human, changes in blood chemistry, respiratory pattern, skin chemistry, produce volatile compounds that a dog with Beau's olfactory capability registers as a systemic alert signal. He couldn't leave her side because her body was already telling him something was wrong. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If these stories matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. The battery was replaced that Sunday. A CO detector was installed on every floor. By Monday, the furnace was condemned and replaced by Thursday. Ruth stayed the following weekend, too. She slept in the guest room, window cracked, with Beau on the floor beside the bed. Neither of them moved much until morning. The next story involves a German shepherd who refused to let a father pick up his newborn daughter for 4 days straight, and the diagnosis that explained everything no one in that family had suspected.